Ethereum is incredibly interesting. It took me a good while to get my head around what's going on. Here's my technical outline. Whilst the technical map of Bitcoin remains bearish and with a still high likelihood of a downwards outbreak, Ethereum displays a lot of strength. However, that strength may be capped in the short to mid-term. For despite all the Ethereum hype and optimism right now, it seems to me that Ethereum is in the early stages of forming a big bullish continuation pattern. The respective developments of that of Bitcoin and Ethereum and how vastly they differ from each other makes the immediate future incredibly complex. I really had to apply myself here, and I've spent 2 full days at working out what's really going on. But this is where you separate technical analysis from technical analysis. Just drawing some lines and looking at Ichimoku's harakiris and whatever the hell the indicators out there are called can easily generate noise and misinformation that will cause you to lose a lot of money. For as strong as Ethereum may look at the moment, the short to mid-term downside is between 10 to 20%. The conclusions I'm about to present are the result of a dire energy exhaustion, and I'm willing to revise and update everything in this episode if or when new critical data were to emerge, because what may hold true for now may rapidly alter upon any sudden changes in sentiment. And this is where my job begins, for it's my job to not be tricked by the sudden technical twists and turns, but to rather figure out how the map emerges and to quickly adapt to it. Please let me know if you have any thoughts and reflections, as I highly value your feedback and inputs. But before diving into the technicals head first, do note that nothing in this episode is financial advice. This is all for educational purposes only. And if this episode helps you straighten out what's going on in an easy to fathom fashion, then please return the favor by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Let's now take a look at Ethereum's technicals to understand how they relate to those of Bitcoin. But what makes this difficult is that we're not only looking at Ethereum's isolated technicals, we're looking at them from a combined perspective to those of Bitcoin. Whilst Bitcoin is still inherently weak and seemingly bound in a bearish continuation pattern, Ethereum alone shows a lot of strength. For Ethereum has managed to establish no less than 3 higher highs on the hourly and has now found its way all the way back to its all-time high. It has cut through several key horizontal resistances and indicators with ease, and it just seems to be an unstoppable force in action. If we look at these things in isolation, they all paint a clear picture. Things are really bullish for Ethereum. But when we add Bitcoin to the mix, of which Ethereum to a great deal is directly dependent on, the short to mid-term upside is very limited and the risk to reward horrible. But with that said, Ethereum may be in the making of a huge bullish formation. Now, my basic premise is this. Bitcoin still looks rotten to the core, and a downwards break is the strongly favored outcome from a statistical point of view. If Bitcoin looks this bleak, it would make no sense for Ethereum to just shoot off to the moon, for you don't really see one of the pairs rallying and the other crashing at the very same time. They're just too interconnected for that. One may rally whilst the other one consolidates, that's perfectly legit, but for both of them to take off in entirely different directions, I don't think so. The only feasible exception is at the very end of a markup, but we're nowhere near that. In this sense, as long as Bitcoin stays bearish and until proven otherwise from a northbound triangle outbreak, Ethereum's going nowhere. At least nowhere good. Bitcoin began by forming what seemed to be a symmetrical triangle. That triangle has now re-evolved into a confirmed descending triangle with 3 touches on each side, which is even more bearish than the first one. This formation alone has a technical target at around 46,000, which would nicely align with the horizontal support zone in the same region. However, that technical target is local and doesn't mean it will ultimately stop and bottom out there specifically. Given that Ethereum has a good strength momentum versus that of Bitcoin, and one that will probably not end until it reaches its key resistance level at 0.053, don't worry, we'll discuss this in detail in a separate episode, it finally struck me that Ethereum may very well be in the midst of establishing a range or formation of its own. In such case, and given the technical data we have available at the moment, we're likely looking at either a big ascending triangle on the 4-hour chart, or we might be in for a sideways range, both of which are bullish continuation formations. Of course, this premise may still change with short notice. It may turn into a descending channel too, or whatever else it feels like. But we'll deal with that as we go, and I'll make sure to keep you in the light. By that token, things really look good for Ethereum, and given that things proceed on this track, a northbound outbreak towards new all-time highs could be expected within roughly a couple of weeks. What I particularly appreciate about this is that a downwards breakout and late month bottoming out for both Bitcoin and Ethereum would do the job of cooling off both of their vastly overstretched monthly RSIs. With that said, I do not outrule the possibility of a late month rising wedge in Ethereum, one that will bring it up to the 0.053 resistance and then brutally collapse. This would be really bearish for Ethereum, but we'll deal with this possible one once we get there. We'll know soon enough if it were to play out or not. Sure, Bitcoin can still break out upwards, I don't rule that out, even though it's neither likely nor would make much sense as the technicals are vastly overstretched. Such outbreak could easily turn into a fake out to punish, scare and scar any market participants, for the market just loves that stuff. Let's resume with this episode's thesis, in which Bitcoin gets its downwards outbreak. This in turn will cause Ethereum to follow suit and break down, but given that Ethereum as of now is forming a big bullish formation, whether that be an ascending triangle or a sideways range, any Bitcoin plunge will bring Ethereum down with it. However, in such case, we may not expect Ethereum to exit its formation, but rather to test the formation bottom thereof amidst Bitcoin bottoming out. As of producing this episode, Ethereum's retesting its all-time high. I'd personally be surprised if it were to not get rejected here. It's a strong psychological resistance, especially so amidst Bitcoin's crawling weakness, and it's just in the midst of completing a parabolic little fifth wave of a mini market cycle. And all the while, despite trading at the very all-time high, the 4-hour RSI is still looking weak and is trading within a bearish channel. This to me speaks of fragility. So if Bitcoin were to eventually break down from its triangle, we can safely expect Ethereum to follow suit. And upon a downwards outbreak for Bitcoin, Ethereum should quickly find its way down to its formation bottom. And the lower Bitcoin were to go, the lower we can naturally expect Ethereum to go. The two areas of current technical relevance are minus 10% from the peak for an establishing of an ascending triangle, or minus 20% from the peak for a sideways range. A minus 10 to 20% drop for Bitcoin would leave it at 44,000 to 50,000 respectively, but given that Ethereum has a strong momentum compared to that of Bitcoin, we may technically expect Bitcoin to suffer more than Ethereum. In this sense, a range between either 48,000 to 50,000 or 42,000 to 44,000 should be technically expected. And this makes a lot of technical sense, for as we've discussed throughout this 2021 Bitcoin series, Bitcoin has never taken out a pivot top amidst any previous markups, and staying above 42,000 would keep that tradition intact. That was all for now. Thank you and goodbye.